Howdy. I'm so excited to finally talk about this. I've been waiting for months. Have any of you ever noticed that the Stop. I'm Red Cloak HBC. I'm from the future. There's something else we have to cover before we can make this video. What? No. No. Spoiler warnings for Undertale and Deltarune. If you haven't played them, go do that first. So hey, you guys remember the main melody in Undertale? The earliest we can hear it is when we put an umbrella over this broken down statue, right? I think a lot of players miss this, but that turns out to be very early game foreshadowing for Asriel Dreamer. This has already been covered by the Undertale Science Reddit, but basically the statue's horns seem to be that of a boss monster, and the music box is designed to play when water flows over it, implying it was meant to be powered by this memorial fountain before Mediton basically took it over. The song from the music box is called Memory, and it's the same motif that plays during the part of Asriel's battle, in which you remind him of his life with the first fallen human. And if you need more evidence, the game files call this his theme. But if this is old news, why am I going over all this? Well, because this sets a precedent for the main melody of the game being a major motif for one of the major characters. And something I find very interesting about Deltarune's main theme is, this one has lyrics. First, some quick disclaimers. Don't hassle people about the text-to-speech, just in general. People shouldn't have to defend their decisions regarding what makes them comfortable while interacting with others online. This channel is about all the fun ways we can fit the pieces together, not to craft the one perfect theory. It's fine to disagree. In fact, it's welcome. I'll love to see all the things I missed, or all the other ways we can look at things. So if you see a theory you think is ridiculous, please don't get so caught in this need to be right that you started acting rude to each other. Basically, don't be a birdly. Finally, there will be flashing lights and images later in the video. Check the timestamps below if you're photosensitive. Right, so normally we tackle this question from a where's the motif standpoint, but the challenge here is, don't forget it's all over the place. It plays multiple times before you enter the Dark World. It plays as you traverse the fields and forest of Chapter 1. It plays when you fight Jebel, when you seal the fountain, and even on the menus of Chapter 2. However, if we look at the lyrics, we can start to uncover why that might be. Wait, are you about to try adding the full song, with lyrics, to this video? Yes? Don't do that. What? Why not? You fool. Holy Congadero, what is that?
When the light is running low, and the shadows start to grow, and the places that you know seem like fantasy, there's a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold, with the truth, the promise in our hearts. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.
That sounds like plot if ever I've heard it. The first half could be referring to the Dark Worlds, although I've also seen it argued it could be referring to a dream. Given that you can warp directly into the Dark World by falling asleep on repeat playthroughs, those might even be the same thing. Obviously the shining in the cold bit is unsettling now that we can associate cold with snowgrave, but it's the last 4 lines that really interest me, because they imply a history with the listener. So the first question I have is, who's singing this song? Well, let's run through our list of suspects. First up is Susie. Susie is indeed with us in the dark, but her friendship with Chris is a budding one. We first hear this song in Chapter 1, and around that time, Susie's still not sure if Chris will want to be her friend should the Dark World turn out to be a dream. Maybe by the end of the game she and Chris will have a bond intimate enough to justify these lyrics, but given that her voice has a lower pitch to it, It seems unlikely to be her. If we're looking into characters who would have that sort of history with Chris, Noelle and Des also come to mind, since Noelle repeatedly mentions how close they were as kids. The sudden distance as they got older, and the disappearance of Des around that same time, could actually be directly related to some hidden truth. Perhaps it's the truth of how Des disappeared. Or the truth of what's behind this bunker? If we choose to read into the fact that the real-life singer of the song is Laura Shijihara, then that would suggest that the singer is female. But then, with Ralsei and Susie crushing gender stereotyping like worms, I'd caution against leaning too hard on that assumption. In general, it's pretty hard to find a voice that everyone can agree is gender neutral. Trust me, I've tried. So given the potential for this unknown character to be agender, I'd like to highlight another potential candidate. Someone we meet in the dark. Someone who's been with us for a long time. Oh god, he's back, can you? Yeah, I'm on it. You can deal with him later. For now, I'm referring to Chara. Regardless of the run you did in Undertale, there are strong implications that Chara is with the player, coloring certain lines of flavor text, certain act options, and even providing us with some of their memories from when they first fell into the underground. In particular, this explains why we hear Asgore talking to us whenever we get a game over, why we flash back to Asriel finding the first fallen human when we take a tumble in Waterfall, and why we save Asriel in the true pacifist ending. Credit to No Chocolate for this theory. Link down below if you want to read it all in full. If the player completes a genocide run, it ends with them selling their soul, which is a very literal way to describe a promise in our hearts. And finally, between their presence in the game's code, covered already in the Goner code video, and their own description of themselves as the demon that comes when you call its name, they definitely qualify as with us in the dark. If you consider Chara and Chris to be different people, this might also explain Chris's behavior at night, since this is implied to be happening even before we as the player gain control of Chris's heart, due to this birdcage here, which at the very beginning of Chapter 1 already has a bloodstain near it, and is said to have seen a lot of crashes. Ignoring the heart-chucking thing for just a moment, Chris does seem to be having something of a nightmare, at the very least, right at the end here. If Chris and Chara are the same person, this gets very interesting. Is Chris saying they are with us in the dark? Or is something else with them in the dark? Sigh. Okay, I know you're waiting for it. Gaster does seem to have some sort of vague deal with the player, Chris, or both. And if we assume this conversation right here is with Gaster, which is very strongly implied to be true, then any kind of arrangement made here would certainly count as a promise in our hearts. I mean, I don't see anyone trying to smuggle pen and paper in this space, so it's definitely not a promise in writing. If you're skeptical on this being Gaster, or need any kind of a refresher or summary of Gaster, definitely check out this video, because I could not make a recap this good if I tried. To summarize, Gaster has a very particular way of speaking, which is also found in this opening dialogue here. The motif here is, Saint him? Wait. Oh my god, it's a pun. I didn't even realize until editing. Him as in, him, as in, this is the song of a saint? Anyway, the motif here is, Saint him, also known as Gaster's theme, and the name of this song is, another hymn, which, oh god, are there more Gasters? He describes the dark worlds, and his entry 17 music is playing in the dark world, and bunker, so he definitely meets these requirements for with you in the dark. However, I think I might be able to rule out Gaster, and potentially Chara using a super secret special attack. What could this amazing weapon be? More answers in the code? Some secret motif or obscure line of dialogue that cracks this whole thing open? Even better, it's subtitles. Yes, I'm serious. I mentioned before, Gaster has a very specific speaking style. His word choice is short, precise, and distant. His letters are in all caps. The subtitles of Don't Forget, by contrast, are lowercase. The word choice is warm and friendly. But you know, we can actually milk these subtitles for even more information. How? Why? By switching to Japanese, of course. Yes, I know Toby's native language is English, but listen, he works very closely with 8.4 when translating these games, so you can actually gain a lot of canon information from the translations. In fact, that's actually how we know Sans is Papyrus's older brother. The limitations of Japanese force the speaker to specify. I know most of my audience can't read Japanese, so I'm going to color code everything here to make this easier to follow along. Also, mandatory disclaimer, I'm not a native speaker. I'm not even fluent, I'm a filthy casual. Have some mercy, humans. Alright, so to begin with, let's start with the writing systems. English has two writing systems, the printed alphabet and the cursive alphabet. Japanese has three, hiragana and katakana, which are the simplest to learn and together are called kana. And kanji, which isn't. Unlike English, it's pretty common to see all three letter types in a sentence, but a lot of games, especially games for younger audiences, omit kanji because, look at this madness. You thought 26 letters was bad? Try thousands. Games like Pokemon Green and Earthbound don't use kanji, and for the most part, Undertale doesn't either. Look at this glorious wall of kana. Fantastic. So what does this have to do with Gaster? Well, Gaster is extra unusual in these games, because he only uses kanji and katakana. This is super weird, like it's not unheard of, but this definitely isn't a common speaking style in video games, or in general. Obviously these subtitles don't do that. We can see it's using all three systems, so we can, probably, rule out the possibility that Gaster is like, standing outside our room, singing a creepy serenade to us while we fall asleep. What about Chara? Well, remember how I said Undertale doesn't use kanji, for the most part? Well, Chara is one of few exceptions. In a sea of simple kana, Chara speaks with as much kanji as possible. It's very unsettling, and has led to quite a bit of speculation regarding this moment right here in the Goner Creator segment. Lowercase letters, some here rig on up, but still quite a bit of kanji. Surely that's gotta be Chara, right? Well, maybe. That's almost certainly not Gaster, don't get me wrong, and if this were Undertale we'd probably be able to wrap a little bow on this, but Deltarune actually does include a fair amount of kanji. Where? Well, you funky little word. You haven't realized it yet, but that is actually the right question. Consider for a moment, Susie. Does she use hiragana, kanji? Or all three? Well, let's watch a cutscene. I don't see any kanji. So alright, let's head into the dark world to go poke Ralsei. What? Holy Kungadero, do you see that? That's kanji. But why? Let's rewind a bit and eyeball the cutscene right before this. Alphys isn't using kanji. In fact, no one in the classroom is. Does Noelle use kanji? Doesn't look like it. Chapter 2? No. What about here? So okay, that's very, very interesting. Characters do still have speaking quirks, like don't even get me started on Spamton. Actually do. Spamton's a delight, but, as a general rule, character in the light world do not use kanji, and character in the dark world do, even if they aren't Darkners. So this doesn't tell us who this is, but it does tell us where they are. But that doesn't help us cross off Chara? So is there any other way we can reassure ourselves long enough to sleep at night, without imagining a knife-wielding human hiding beneath our bed or so? Thankfully, yes. Using the combined linguistic might of the Susie Undertale Tumblr blog, an actual resident of Japan and Twitch streamer, Claire Puppy Love, we can find other linguistic quirks to identify the characters. Both of these sources know way more about Japanese than I do. You should absolutely give them a look. Now then, Japanese, like many other languages, has many different pronouns for the words I and you. Wait, English speakers, no, don't leave me. Alright. Imagine you're meeting someone with a ton of authority that you greatly fear or respect. You'll probably call them sir or mom, right? But if you were good friends, maybe you'd call them buddy or pal. It's the same sort of concept. There are different ways to say I and you in Japanese that indicate levels of respect and closeness. Gaster, for example, uses where, a very formal, almost archaic we. When he refers to us, he says onatte, which is basically the textbook standard you that you'll see in every English speaker's guide. So what about Chara? Chara uses watashi for I, which, again, that's the textbook gender-neutral standard I, and omoe for you, which is pretty unusual. Although that word was once used to denote respect, it's taken on a bit of a snide sarcastic tone over the years. For comparison, Susie uses omoe on pretty much everyone, all the time because Susie does not give a damn. This sudden shift from monoto to omoe is one of the other reasons people suspect that this is no longer Gaster, because even if he's doing the sense thing of changing the letters, it would still be unusual to switch pronouns like that. What about don't forget? Well, it does use watashi, and again, way more kanji than most of the game, but the you here isn't omae, it's Kimi. Oh? Ah. But hey, that's a good thing, right? That means we're safe, right? Right? Well, maybe, but consider this. Your, you, pronouns can change from person to person. Remember that, pal versus ma'am, thing. So if this song is speaking to someone else, such as Chris, or Asriel, and not the player, then it might still be Chara or Chris. But this does beg the question, does anyone else use Kimi? Well, there's Birdly, but can we all agree that it's probably not Birdly? Please? Please don't let it be Birdly. The word Kimi is usually meant to imply closeness or familiarity, although Birdly uses it to be condescending, and Asgore to be warm and inviting, so you can see it has quite a bit of variance depending on context. So Kimi's probably super common then, right? Okay, last crazy complex language thing, I swear. Hang in there, viewers. Imagine for a minute if one of your friends said, "Hey, you." That would be pretty rude of them, because it sounds like they don't remember your name, right? Japan is like that, but bigger. If you're friends with someone, you're expected to use their name for everything, and if you want to see an example of that, might I present Noelle. Noelle is like a level 50 politeness mancer who never uses the word you, even if you're about to kill her, or she's trying to warn you about imminent danger. She always uses Chris's name, even though they're childhood friends. So, is there anyone else who refers to us as Kimi? Let me try that again. Is there anyone else in this game who uses Kimi? Because if Flowey turns out to be in this game, I'm going to flip a biscuit. Anyone else? In the dark world? Well, sort of. Might I present Ralsei? If you ask a casual Japanese player, how does Ralsei refer to Chris? The answer you'll probably get is kurisu, because, again, that's polite. Ralsei is a good and polite goat boy. Look, he even made a cake for us. Ah. But you know, there are moments when Ralsei uses Kimi, and it's hard to say why. As a prince, he could be trying to honor us with a friendly pronoun, but I'd like to present a second theory. Here's a list of all the times I've caught Ralsei using Kimi at us. Right here when he's giving us tutorials. Here when he warns us that if we use violence, we might not like the ending. Here when he's asking us if we consider him a lackey. Here if you die in chapter 2, and here when we're in prison. This last one in particular catches my eye, because on repeat playthroughs, it kind of sounds like he's about to acknowledge the player, but then Susie interrupts him before he can finish. I'll admit this theory is shaky, but as we progress it does seem like Ralsei has a particular interest in the player, and their will, over that of the other characters. Even though both Susie and Chris are Lightners, Ralsei insists that only Chris can seal the fountain, only Chris can decide how to act, and only Chris should make decisions for the rest of the party. But does he actually mean Chris? Or does he mean the player? We know he talks to Chris off screen, but since we only hear the ending, it's hard to know what they're discussing. We know Ralsei is explaining why something is to Chris, but without context it's all speculation. Either way, this heart of a hero statement certainly sounds like he knows we were with Susie just now, and with the word root, this seems even more on the nose. He's clearly waiting for Chris to send us to Susie, and seems flustered when the entire cutscene plays out in our absence. He even tries to get Susie to at least describe the cutscene to us, so the player doesn't feel like they missed anything, but she refuses. For me, the most clear moment in which Ralsei implies they care more about the player than Chris comes here, right after the battle with Neo. Susie is the one who notices Chris isn't feeling well after the battle, and if you, the player, try to wave it off, Ralsei actually tries to go along with it, even though Chris clearly looks upset. He says, Chris doesn't want us to worry, but it seems like what he really means is, the player doesn't want us to worry. Chris's actual feelings appear to be secondary. But look at this line. I hear you say. He's offering to give Chris a hug even though he's so shy about it. Clearly he cares about Chris too. Well, maybe, and though I hate to drag our precious goat boy through the mud, I think there might be another explanation. Like Undertale, this game makes a lot of implications about the soul controlled by the player. Not only as a powerful fountain sealing plot device, but as a source of comfort and power for other Darkners. In Chapter 1, we learned that being separated from Lightners causes the Darkners some kind of anguish, and then here in Chapter 2, we see Spamton's downward spiral as a result of the Lightners never looking his way. Spamton himself is very direct about his interest in our soul. Even when his primary focus is that whole robot body plan, he still immediately starts gravitating towards Chris, and dropping line after line about it, like a sleazy pickup artist looking for a good time. It seems to me like this effect is felt in general when a Darkner is near a Lightner, and with Ralsei we can actually see this in action, with Ralsei's blushing animation. Many of you may know that Ralsei blushes when he stands near Chris, but Lil Brimstone on Reddit noticed something very interesting. Ralsei doesn't just blush when he's near Chris, he actually only blushes when he's overlapping with the soul. If he's even a single pixel off from the soul, no blush. Now, I will be the first to admit, this is not a perfect theory. To begin with, since Ralsei resembles Fluttery, and they both use the same pronouns, it's just as possible that Asriel is the one singing this song. We don't know what Chris sounds like, and the I pronoun being used here isn't Ralsei's boku, it's a neutral watashi. We do see Ralsei use another pronoun, namely warek, when they're in the hood, to sound more mysterious. But in an intimate moment like this, I would expect Ralsei to be using boku as he usually does. Also, while Ralsei does use Kimi, primarily while he's tutorializing or otherwise talking to the player, he also uses Chris's actual name and Kimi together right here, when he asks if we think he's our lackey. Typically in Japanese, that would be a clear example of him calling Chris Kimi, unless he's talking to both of us. I'm not sure what proper grammar is for talking to someone who's clearly being possessed, and I would be pretty concerned if there was a built-in precedent for that in any language. Either way, given that Ralsei seems to have some kind of awareness of what Chris is doing in the light world, and given that he's somehow able to show up wherever Chris is the moment we enter a completely different dark world, yet, I'd say he's with us in the dark. With the parallels between Asriel and Ralsei, it would make sense to me that the main theme of the game would be their songs, but I know there's no way Toby would let us puzzle out the full context this early in the game. You know, it's interesting, Ralsei is actually the only character so far to sing, at least in Deltarune. And it's an unskippable part of the plot too, presuming you're playing pacifist. I wonder if there are any implications that this might be the song coming from the sea? What do you think? Can I talk about it yet? Yes. Finally. Next time. Damn it. Self-care is important. Remember what happened the last time. Fair enough. That was exhausting. Phew. Oh crap, I forgot to mention the chapter select. Remember earlier when I said the voice in the beginning changes from all caps, katakana and kanji, to proper casing and using hiragana? The same thing happens in the file select screen. Chapter 1 is all caps, katakana and kanji, and Chapter 2 isn't. There, see, I didn't forget. It's okay, you can put down the keyboard. It's alright now. Now then, while I get the next video ready, what do you think? Is Asriel actually trapped in the dark world, and this song is our call to save him? Is Ralsei secretly Asriel? Am I being unfair to Birdly fans given his epic character development at the end of chapter? Are the pronouns a misdirect and this is actually Chara or Gaster, reminding us of our dark pact? Who is this song even directed at? Chris? Or the player? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're fluent in Japanese, because I have never set foot in Japan, and am actually just a frogget in a trench coat. This video had a lot of unexpected hurdles that I wouldn't have been able to clear without a ton of help, so special thanks to Claire Puppy Love for all the help with translations, link to her channel down below. And a huge thank you to Salty Seabread, who not only provided music for the Gaster bit, but who also saved my bacon when I accidentally triggered the YouTube bots by playing Don't Forget at the beginning there. I am not very good with audio, and there's no way I could have made something that good or that fast. Thank you as always to my generous supporters on Patreon. And finally, thank you to all of you for your patience and all the positivity. Especially in that last video, I was super nervous about how you all would react to that, and having so many encouraging comments during those first few days was like getting a nice warm hug from a best friend. I'm still blown away from the reaction to this one. Holy Cungadero. Until then.